Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Lawyers on the Rocks. The Lawyers on the Rocks are Jeremy Eldridge, Kurt Nachman, and Adam Crandall. Jeremy Eldridge practices criminal defense. I'm Kurt Nachman. I handle civil litigation and personal injury matters, and Adam Crandall does whatever it is that immigration lawyers do. We are Maryland-based lawyers, and this is our show. On this week's episode, we are very grateful to have with us the comptroller for the state of Maryland, Brooke Lierman. We are... what are we drinking today, guys?
Well, this is a split episode. I think it's important for professional responsibility reasons to first say, because we have the comptroller here, none of us focus on the area of tax law. We don't practice tax law. None of us know what we're talking about tax law, so we're going to try to stay away from tax law. The comptroller is having the finest of Gerolsteiner. I'm going to pronounce that for them. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Correct, yeah.
Gerolsteiner. Sparkling mineral water from the mountains of Gerolsteiner. Made and bottled in Gerolsteiner.
This is a new water choice for me.
We went to Streets, which is the supermarket across the street, and we said, give us your finest Wasser.
Thank you.
Corn bubbles. And they said, you must go with the Gerolsteiner. And so it has been on ice chilling for you.
It actually is from a specific geological region, although unnamed.
Dundalk.
It is natural. It's naturally carbonated at its source, which may also be Dundalk. And it's got a high mineral content, a good source of calcium and magnesium. It's also naturally refreshing and tasteful.
I hate to break this to you. Am I allowed to call you Brooke? Do I have to call you comptroller?
You can call me Brooke. That's fine.
And so, Brooke, I do want to tell you, we do a drink review. And Adam will be doing our drink review because Adam, Kurt, and Gideon and I are having an alcoholic beverage.
Okay.
But because we don't know what the Gerolsteiner tastes like,
Yes.
you're going to have to
give you my
engage in
review.
the mineral water review.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and I get what I love about this too is, and sharing a little bit of personal stuff before we get in. I knew you before you were the comptroller. I knew you before you were a delegate. I met you as an attorney in the city of Baltimore. Your son and my daughter went to New Century School together before they were eligible, so to speak, to go to public school.
Yep.
And so I met you just as the same thing as me, the busy lawyer and busy parent trying to get in and out to pick up their kid or drop their kid off.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that is why I adore you so much to start is I met you as doing the same thing as I was. Can I bill enough hours in the day to get to pick up my kid? And so before we dive into what you're doing now and why, as you know, on the show, Lawyers on the Rocks, we love having lawyers on. Mm-hmm. You're born and raised in Montgomery County.
Actually not born. Born in D.C.
As am I.
D.C. native. Yeah.
You shouldn't tell people that on a Baltimore-based show.
Sorry, but, I cannot tell a lie.
I was too. I was born at Walter Reed. Where were you born?
Oh, neat. I lived down the street from Walter Reed, but I was born at GW. But
Tacoma
I grew up
Park.
on 16th Street.
I swear to God, everyone that's running Maryland right now is quietly from that part of Montgomery County. I mean, everyone that ran from office is from that Tacoma Park, but sort of bohemian area.
I was born in D.C. and then when I was later in middle school, we moved to Bethesda. So I graduated from Montgomery County Public High School.
Went to Walt Whitman. Wonderful public high school.
Yes.
And then from there, you go to Dartmouth. Mm-hmm. And David Nitkin, who is a good friend of ours, says hello. He says
Howard County.
He says you have to rep Dartmouth, and he's actually coming over tonight to hang out.
There's a lot of great Dartmouth people in Howard County where you live.
Oh, we collect great people. I mean, that's just what we do in Howard County. We choose civility out there, Adam. I don't know, as a city guy. And so just kind of starting there, where did you first develop an interest in the law before leaving Dartmouth and then going to law school?
Sure. I mean, I think I developed an interest in the law early on in life, just because I really enjoyed arguing with my parents. I was convinced of of the rightness of my ways and the things that I wanted to do it my way, and I was seeking justice all the time in our household now.
I hope that's come full circle for you. I really pray that's come full circle.
Oh, it will.
For you.
I'm sure my daughter, who is 6 going on 16, has a world full of retribution for me. But no, really, I'm the first lawyer in my family. My mother was a pediatric nurse practitioner. She worked at Children's Hospital and then worked at a community health center. My dad had his own business. He was a lobbyist for many years on Capitol Hill and actually sort of made fun of lawyers all the time, was proud that his firm had never hired a lawyer.
It is low-hanging fruit.
I know, it is. So yeah, but But I really I did not go to law school right away. I took several years off, and I worked on political campaigns as an organizer, a field organizer, like out in the field, knocking doors. And the higher I got up in campaign world, I also did AmeriCorps for a year. I helped start a nonprofit mentoring program, and then was the first development director there. I worked at the Center for American Progress, a think tank. But I loved organizing because I loved working with people. But I found that the higher I got up in campaign world, the less contact I had with real people. Like I was talking to campaign consultants all the time rather than talking to voters and being in neighborhoods. And I said, this isn't what I want to do. What I want to be able to do is work with real people and help them solve their problems. And I felt like I just needed another tool to be able to do that. And the tool went back to the fact that I was decently good at arguing, and so applied and went to law school. And sort of that's how I found it.
Did you wear your law school colors on purpose?
I didn't. But I do have quite a few burnt sienna or burnt orange outfits because hook 'em. I went from Dartmouth, cold, snowy, days.
Yeah, the juxtaposition of those
Austin,
two
Texas.
schoolings
Yes.
could not be farther.
But it was sort of on
another.
purpose. I mean, I loved Dartmouth. I got a wonderful education there, learned so much about myself, and developed amazing friendships. But really, when I started looking at law schools, I was like, I've done the sort of small New England college thing, and I want to go to a public university. I'm looking for a great school. I want to try a different region of the country. And so started applying to public law schools south of the Mason-Dixon line, basically. And at that point, I wasn't living in Baltimore.
You couldn't have gone further south.
I know.
I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. We're not going to talk about your University of Texas bets, by the way, while we're here, as they relate to Texas.
The year
so
I was there, Vince Young was there, and we won the national championship in football, which was pretty fun, too. So
also Vince Young's second to last good season.
Yes. And another person who was there when I was there was Kevin Durant.
Real?
So
that's right.
I purposely made sure to go to basketball games that year that he was there, so that because everyone was talking about him already, and I was like, I gotta go see this guy at Texas while
you
I'm
are
here.
so spoiled. Normally, our
great.
Chapel Hill alum to my right loves regaling, and Kurt went to Penn State, so I have to hear this all the time because I'm Maryland and like outside of Stevie Francis and a national championship in 2002. I don't have as much to throw around as these two gentlemen do.
Yeah, 2002, the only year I ever won my NCAA bracket in an office pool, because I always root for Maryland. So
that always sounds like you should start one at the comptroller's office just so you're going to be able to win one there, right?
Yeah.
You just have to make sure everyone pays, right?
Right.
So don't send letters.
Everybody's got to pay their fair share.
I mean, that's the point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you go to University of Texas, and then and I went through your resume, but I think the next thing that really piqued my interest was you got into civil rights litigation. Yeah. And that is actually where I first met you.
Yes.
And I think there's such a natural, Malcolm Ruff, for example, Baltimore City delegate who does civil rights litigation with Billy Murphy's firm.
Yep.
There's such a strong correlation between lawyers that practice civil rights litigation and then going into politics. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little about sort of what inspired you to make that jump initially to delegate and
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel really lucky. I had a federal clerkship, which is actually what brought me to Baltimore.
Judge Chazanow.
So I clerked for both Judge Chazanow and Judge Legg. So I did 2 judges, and it was amazing. And I had a great experience, and that's how I got to Baltimore ultimately. But then I discovered the firm of Brown, Goldstein, and Levy, which is where I practiced, and they did this amazing thing and changed my life and hired me. And it's a phenomenal firm. I'm biased, but I think it's a phenomenal place to practice law. My first week on the job, or maybe my second week on the job, they sent me to Arkansas to defend depositions in a case where we were suing a bus company on behalf of bus drivers who were not being paid all that they were owed. So, overtime cases. So
it's work that you can feel good about.
Yeah, it's work that I feel great about. And it was just really interesting and compelling work as well. So I loved it, and I learned so much. And but it's interesting too, my evolution in politics actually started around the time I was at the law firm, but even a little bit before, because on my first day of my federal clerkship, I was living in Fells Point. My husband and I were on Wolf Street, And I went to catch the number 10 bus down Eastern Avenue to get to the federal courthouse, and it didn't come. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to work. I like ran back and got Evan to drive me there and discovered.
That's not a short walk.
No, it was not. And I was going to be late. And so, eventually realized that I just couldn't rely on the number 10 bus to get me to the courthouse. And so I just started walking. But it made me angry. I was like, this is crazy. This is a major American city. Like, why can't I rely on the bus? Because even in Austin, I had taken the bus places. And, when I lived in other places, I'd taken the bus. When I lived in D.C., I took the bus. I didn't take the metro because I wasn't near a metro stop. So I started getting really involved in transit advocacy, actually, and learned about the red line that was coming and joined a red line committee and started, advocating around it. And then on my walk to work every day, I would see these empty tree pits or stumps, and I'd start 311ing them. And even now, my husband jokes that if I ever go missing after a walk, like, I can just follow my 311 trail of like trees.
Adam is so excited right now. Adam wants to like compare 311 calls with you. Like burning up Eric Costello or 311. Adam's like, after my own heart.
So, but and there were these things going on. And I would join my neighborhood association. So I was just getting really involved in learning about Baltimore. And eventually it just got, and then I was also practicing law and got sort of just frustrated at the state of things in Baltimore City. I'd grown up in Montgomery County. I'd seen beautiful schools, the ride-on transit system, which was great, the DC Metro system, which goes into Montgomery County, which was great. Like, I'd seen all these things, and I was like, we're the same state.
And has been operational for years,
right.
beyond the purple line that's coming, but it had been in place and stable.
Exactly. And so I just, that's actually more of what prompted me to run, was I thought we can do better. Like, we have to do better, in fact. And the state in particular has to do better for Baltimore City.
They should name the number 10 bus after you.
The number 10 bus is now the Navy line, but yeah.
But it's always funny to find out, it really is, for someone that's been in politics as long as you have now, that usually is some story. Like when we had Luke Klimpitcher on the show, like, it usually is one thing that kind of strikes you personally going, well, why isn't anyone fixing that?
Right.
And then diving right in. Obviously, you chose to really dive in the deep end. That's all your fault.
Into the deep end.
Especially because growing up in a family with politics.
Yep.
How do you think, getting into politics, what was your dad's reaction, out of curiosity?
Yeah, no.
Was he happy? It's like, hey, you're coming into my world, so to speak. I got an 11-year-old that wants to be a lawyer like me.
Yeah.
Or was it like, my father's in the military, don't join the military.
Right.
I did it for 40 years.
No, he was excited. I feel very lucky. So actually, I'm the third person in my family to run for office, but the first to win. So my dad ran for Congress in 2000 in Montgomery County, but lost to Connie Morella. And then my younger brother, Kyle, actually ran for delegate when he was right out of college. There was an open seat in Bethesda, and he ran, and he lost by 300 votes.
I don't want to be at your family dinners. I feel you're like the Peyton Manning and Eli.
No, but they were excited. And my mom told somebody once, she didn't say this to me, but she said it to a neighbor or a friend or something, came up to me and said, you know what your mom said? And I said, no, what did my mom say? She said, it took the woman Lierman to win the election.
Oh, that's strong. That's strong. That's a good comment.
But I couldn't do it without my family. I mean, of course, my husband, who has always been incredibly supportive, he's not very political, but he has been supportive in the way of like helping our family function and picking up the kids and things so that I can do the other work. But also, I have two amazing brothers, great sisters-in-law, and amazing parents who were all in, knocking doors, standing out on election day, handing out flyers, saying, vote for my daughter, vote for my sister.
I heard they're actually helping with the tax letters that your office is doing.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I thought the campaign was Write a Lierman.
Yeah. Right. But it's so I feel really fortunate to have had the support of my family all along the way. Yep.
Do you when you were delegate? Speaking of sort of family and balance, when you're a delegate, it's a year-round job, obviously, but it's much more demanding 4 months out of the year.
Yep.
And you're about 15 months in to your new job. As going from delegate in Baltimore City to comptroller.
Yes.
How has that transition been for you, both professionally and personally?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different life, right? I went from having two jobs, both practicing law and being a state delegate, and the unpaid third job of being a mom, but most demanding and most important, of course, to having one job, right? And my job now is, it's more than full time, right? I am always on call. I am always able to answer emails. It's a very different job, but I really love it. And I would say it's equally challenging and rewarding. It's definitely the most challenging thing I've ever done, but also incredibly rewarding in terms of rebuilding an agency, but also in the potential to do bigger and better things for Marylanders writ large, and to set examples here in Maryland for things that other states can be doing, frankly. And so I really love it. And I think my kids, they're proud of me, I like to think. And, they know what taxes are much more than their classmates do. They know what a comptroller is and how to spell it, I think.
Your kids could probably open one of those tax preparation centers.
Yes, right.
That you're so fond of.
Right.
So let's just dive into the comptroller stuff. So I guess the first thing is, and obviously you've been in the Goldstein building for 15 months. And when you first walk in, you're familiar with the 25-foot oil painting when you first walk in. So I just wanted to know, when is the Brooke Lierman 25-foot oil painting?
Not for quite some time.
It's so big.
It is
it's so big. Like,
yes.
if a lot of lawyers listen,
I'm not going to get 25-foot painting.
You go into courtrooms and you get, like, when you retire, Adam, and Kurt knows what I'm talking about, you get one that's that size. You get like a 25 by 40.
3 by 5. Yeah. 3 by 5.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'll have to.
The Goldstein building, it's like
I'm lucky.
something that you would see in the Prado.
Is it a Schaefer?
Yeah, I mean, no. It's of Louis Goldstein, and then there's another one. It's got to be 40 feet tall. The more that I talk about this, the bigger it's going to get.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the largest painting in the state of Maryland. I just I had to mess with you about that.
No. Yeah, it's what I'm excited about right now is, so when you walk in, there's actually 2 huge paintings of
and they're beautiful.
older Maryland figures, and on the right we have Louis and Peter. And then in the middle, it's now empty because I'm hoping, and I've been told, that we're going to get a picture of Nancy Kopp up, our former treasurer.
Oh, that would be awesome.
So that would be really nice. So but really proud to work in the Goldstein Treasury building and have a great team. And it's an old building. I will tell you, sometimes people ask me, what is the biggest surprise since you took office? And that happened on my second day of office, when our deputy chief of staff, Emily, who stayed, I kept her from the previous administration. She, came and said, I have some news I have to share with you about the building. And I was like, oh my God, is it haunted? Like, what's she
I'm hoping this is some
me?
national treasure sort of
gold in the basement.
Yes.
Gold
Yes.
bullion in
Yes.
the basement.
There is something, but it's not gold, and it's not in the basement. There was a bat infestation in the building, and not like 1 or 2 bats, like 17 bats.
Get
flying
her the
around.
Batman sunglasses over there.
Flying around the building. And
so
bats,
you have a bat cave.
So there was a bat infestation, and I was like, wait, how long has this been going on? Months. And I was like, are people working in the building? Like, just bats are like flying around their heads? Yes, that had been the situation. So we evacuated the building because you cannot be with bats.
That's a significant
It's
health
a public
issue.
health risk. And
Did
so
you have to
Definite
get
health
rabies
issue.
shots?
we did not have to get rabies shots, but we did. Then we worked with the DGS, the Department of General Services, that manages the buildings, and animal control. You cannot kill bats. They are an endangered species.
They're free range.
So we got the bats out of the building. We got people back into the building. And then I assessed the building, and I was like, yeah, it needs some other work too.
So is the Treasury building connected to the underground layers of tunnels? You know what I'm talking about, Jeremy.
Oh, yeah, that go to the
that
State
connect
House.
the stuff in Baltimore.
Oh no! So this is in Annapolis.
Oh, it's in Annapolis.
Yeah,
okay.
so the Treasury
So they're
building.
underground
It's not the
buildings in
7
Annapolis.
St. Paul.
Yeah, no, it's not the
location.
7 St. Paul. It's so in Annapolis, the Treasury building. We have 3 buildings in Annapolis actually, and they're right by the State House and the Senate. And we actually do have tunnels connecting all 3 of our buildings. But yeah, it's in Annapolis, and they're old buildings, and have had very little TLC over the years, and so. Thank you to the General Assembly and the governor. I got a little bit of money in the budget the first year to update some of the bathrooms. True story.
Hold on, before you dive into bathrooms real quick, can you just imagine what it feels like as a constituent, you're already scared enough to go visit the tax department, essentially, for the state. And then as you roll up, bats start coming out. It's like the haunted house in all the kids' movies, like, I dare you to spend the night there.
Right. Yeah, I know. And imagine as an employee, you're going into this ancient building with bathrooms that haven't been updated since 1950.
Look, you're a lawyer. You've been in the Mitchell Courthouse. I mean, we go into these some of these bathrooms.
I know.
And I'm not complaining like, oh, I can't use the bathroom. It's just some of these places have not been updated in 60 or 70 years.
Yeah. And it's not, I don't think it's fair to state employees like they're professionals.
You mean for the men's room to have a trough? I think it's like we're not at the Kentucky Derby where you need a trough. I mean, that's like everyone's just kind of looking like, are you using it? Am I supposed to use it? Are they suggesting it?
Yeah. But it's, we obviously I want to rebuild the agency, and to do something like that, you have to show that you care about the people who work there. And I do care about the people who work there. Bathrooms matter. And so
we should not have said it like that. I know we've got to find a better way to say that. Bathrooms are significant.
It's just workspaces matter to people, right? Where people want to be treated like professionals, as they are. So we did a going away party for an executive assistant who left after almost 50 years in the office of the comptroller. She was wonderful. She'd been there for 5 comptrollers. In her going away remarks, she said, I've been here for 5 comptrollers, and it took the woman comptroller to get us new toilet paper dispensers. So, sometimes you got to sweat the small stuff.
2-ply. I've heard about the 2-ply. That's where the tax money's got to go.
But the point is just that we really are trying to invest in the agency, because that will help government work better for people. And, when our employees are happy, they're able to be more productive, to do the work that Marylanders need them to do. And so that was an early focus of ours.
So let's dive into some of the projects, because I have to tell you, you don't hide your lawyer hat well at all. And some of the changes that you've made since you've come in have been clear markers of somebody who is, it's not just about financial accountability. There's an ounce or an undercurrent of prosecutorial or criminal justice accountability there. And so the thing that really stuck out to me was talking about the scam tax preparers. And without diving into what Adam and I do and Kurt do, we get a lot of that stuff. We just get tangents of it where you might have, for instance, a tax preparer that's also engaged in arranging fraudulent marriages, or a tax preparer who's helping somebody commit fraud. But
I investigated some when I was a prosecutor.
Exactly, but no one historically has been excited about going after the tax preparer. And I don't mean the accountant, but sort of, can you explain why that was one of your pet issues and why you wanted to, and also what response you've gotten from it publicly?
Sure. I just think it takes a real scumbag to go after people, who are vulnerable like that. And scam artists are going after the most vulnerable people in society. They're older people often. They're not always computer literate. They're not always financially as educated as perhaps they could be. Immigrants often, people who have the least to lose, frankly, or the most to lose, right? They are the ones who are most vulnerable. And so you have these folks who are scam artists who come in and they take advantage of them. And, so it was important to me that we give our agency additional teeth to go after them, and that there be additional and better coordination among state agencies to catch them, and to make sure that their certificates are removed. We're creating a code of ethics for tax preparers that all tax preparers will have to sign in order to be licensed in the state. And then we also are creating more coordination. So, it was important to me just because when you see a wrong, you try to fix it. And people who are the most vulnerable in society getting taken advantage of like that is wrong. And so to the extent that whatever extent we can solve that problem, we want to solve it. So it was important to me.
Something else that stuck out to me was, and I listened, as I told you before we started, to your WEAA interview with Dr. K. And, being the comptroller, even if issues may not run through your agency as far as auditing, they run through your agency because of economics. And you've pushed some of your economic priorities, and one of which you discussed was a lot of Marylanders have a bad taste in their mouth rightfully or wrongfully, about where casino funds went.
Oh.
And that there were promises made that if we built casinos in the state of Maryland, that this money would go into education funds. Would you explain very eloquently how that's been fixed?
Sure.
But a lot of Marylanders don't know that.
They
and
don't.
now that we see the
Yeah.
marijuana revenue increasing, I think a lot of Marylanders that, once again, may not have the time to pay attention to stuff are going, here we go again.
Right.
We're being told that marijuana money, marijuana revenue, the tax revenue, is going to go into not necessarily in education, but some of the local funds.
Right.
And I just want you, if you can brush on some of those same topics that you had on there, to explain, A, what you were able to solve regarding some of the casino revenue, and then also maybe lessons learned there that were implemented with regard to marijuana revenue. Yeah,
absolutely. So in Maryland, we have a number of different pieces of our budget, different funds. The big one is the general fund, and that's our big pot of money out of which we spend most and fund most projects. But we also have a couple other funds, like the Education Trust Fund and the Transportation Trust Fund. And for many years, each of those funds was sort of rated, right? We took money out of them and used them in the general fund for other projects. But in the, early teens, we passed a constitutional amendment making the Transportation Trust Fund a lockbox, right? So it could not be spent on anything except transportation. But we hadn't done that for the Education Trust Fund until after I was already in office. And we realized that the casino money was indeed going to the Education Trust Fund. But what that had meant was that it was supplanting general fund money instead of supplementing it. And so we said, no. Like this is not what was intended. We need to form a lockbox for the Education Trust Fund so the money can go in and not come out and not be spent on anything but education. So the General Assembly put another ballot initiative on, and we now have a constitutionally required lockbox around our Education Trust Fund, and that's what the casino money goes into. Now, as I talked about on the Dr. K show, there is another fund, though, because what we realized was that while that money was important in the Education Trust Fund, it wasn't sufficient, and it did not fulfill the needs, I will say, of Baltimore City Public Schools, where we have a huge amount of need. More kids in special education. I think we have a higher homeless student population than the entire student population of some of the Eastern Shore counties, right? So just a different kind of need. And so the General Assembly embarked, a 2-year work group called the Kerwin Commission that developed then the blueprint for Maryland's future. And that is really nationally recognized legislation to change how our public schools function. It's not just more money, it's also an accountability and implementation board overseeing where the money is going. It's focusing on career readiness for students who don't want to go to college. It's focusing on apprenticeships, and it's focusing, on making sure that our kids are ready when they graduate to do what's next and prepared for the workforce. So that blueprint for Maryland's future is what some of your listeners will hear referred to during the General Assembly session when it's budget setting time, because we haven't fully funded the blueprint for Maryland's future in the out years.
That was my next question, why I brought up marijuana. I know locally in Howard County there are discussions about, is there enough money for school?
The blueprint.
Can we?
And what they're talking about is the blueprint and funding the blueprint, because there's requirements both for local government and for state government to put in money.
So does marijuana have a role there?
So it doesn't actually. Marijuana is is different than casinos. It is there. In the marijuana statute, in the cannabis statute, it's going to several different funds that are business support, investments in communities that were long neglected and disrupted because of the war on drugs. But then and some to counties and some to municipalities. But then the rest of it goes to the general fund. So it does not go directly to our schools. It's a different pot. Yep.
But so far, I just want to get you. We had. So the tax is 9.
Nobody caught the pun. Okay,
there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
What was the? I missed a pun.
I said it was a different pot, like a different pot of money.
Man.
Sorry, bad pun.
I'm just really trying to. I was trying to be such a good interviewer, but I missed that one. That joke went up in smoke. Oh, that wasn't even a good dad joke.
I have a follow up to that, and you talk about how with respect to education, and we could say this in
Yep.
a lot of different areas, Baltimore presents with different, challenges, different opportunities as well. And I'm curious, I want to hear your take. As a city resident, I was very excited when you won. I was very excited when Wes won, when Bill Ferguson, Senate president. I think when Jeremy and I were talking about putting this together today, I called it the golden age of Baltimore. But could you talk a little bit about how important it is for the city to have statewide elected officials and leaders who are rooted in the city making some decisions for a change?
Yeah, absolutely. I really believe, and I say this as someone who grew up in Montgomery County and found Baltimore later in life, that Maryland can never be, the truly great state that it should be until Baltimore City reaches its full potential. And so all of us, I think, need to be invested in and excited about Baltimore's opportunities and growth. It is the metropolitan area of Maryland, right? And so, you just can't, if you look at a state, you look at its urban core, if it's not doing well, the state can't do well. And so in the long term. And so I think we all need to be invested in Baltimore's success. But, I'll also say, I truly believe, sort of my core fundamental belief is that we all do better when we all do better. And so when I'm in Cumberland, and I'm talking to folks, I'm like, yes, we need to make this investment in Cumberland, just like we need to make these investments in Baltimore. And there are different scales, but they both need to be made, right? And so we all have to think about how to do well, better in the long term. But I also do think, you've seen it, people. I think Baltimore sort of is always in the bullseye. Like, people are always quick to judge and quick to criticize. And sometimes when I travel around the state and I say I live in, downtown Baltimore City, my kids go to Baltimore City public schools, people look at me and are like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, my kids' school, like their middle school, they had the fourth best math test scores in the state last year. But you're not going to see that on the news, we love it.
We talk about the murder rate.
Yeah,
We talk about carjacking investigations.
There's so much great stuff. I mean, amazing restaurants, amazing people, an amazing waterfront, great parks. Is there work to do? 100%. Is it okay that a single person is murdered in Baltimore City? No, right? The crime is unacceptable, but we won't solve the city's problems just by criticizing the city. We have to work together to invest.
Look, we're 100 down. Ivan Bates has been on here twice.
Yeah,
very good friend of ours.
Really encouraging.
And that's where I was going.
See.
We're 100 murders down now, 100 plus.
Yeah.
And if we can continue that trend,
it's so important
with people like Ivan Bates, Eric Barron as the U.S. Attorney, Anthony Brown as AG. That triumvirate of people has proven effective.
Yeah.
Worley's a good police chief, and if we can continue to press on that number. And I brought this up, and you don't have to comment on this, but there was a recent Gervonta Davis. Tank Davis was asked to go to be with the Olympics, and he's on probation. The judge didn't want to let him go, which I'm not assessing that part of it, but how wonderful is it for Baltimore to export something that's not crime related? And so many people when you travel, my wife Shantae that you're friends with, when Shantae travels for work, they used to say to her, first thing, have you seen The Wire? Oh, you're from the home of The Wire.
I mean, it is a great show.
It's a great show, but it's annoying as shit, right? Because they think, oh, it's cool, I saw a show on HBO, right? But the flip side of the coin is, wouldn't it be great to travel and you talk about other cities, like San Francisco has a crime issue, right? But no one associates crime with San Francisco. You're going to San Francisco for the food. So wouldn't it be better when you travel now because the O's are good, you hear more about the O's, and somebody like Gervonta Davis traveling, oh, isn't that cool? That boxer's from Baltimore. He's helping coach, and he's helping with USA Boxing.
Yeah, like Michael Phelps. Right?
Exactly like
we have
Michael
amazing
Phelps.
People.
These positive things that we can put out there so that people's only impression of Baltimore City isn't. I mean, I literally have people that say to me, "You're a defense attorney. Do you wear a flak jacket? Do you wear a bulletproof jacket?" I'm like, you sound insane. And I mean, look, I get it that from an outsider's perspective, they see the city with a lot of crime. But to your point, we have a lot of wonderful things to export that aren't crime related.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think we're finally getting to a point, even 15 months into Ivan and Eric Barron, who's wonderful and not talked about enough. that
My former
collaboration.
House of Delegate mates,
I know.
we got elected the same year, U.S. Attorney Barron and I, and just really proud of him and the work that he's done. And he's
Well, when
a
you have
wonderful
people in
person.
place that love working together and have a great relationship, you get really good results. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I also do think that the person-to-person interactions are really important, right? When you meet somebody who's from a certain place and they tell you all about it, and it means something more than when they see things on the news. You know, my in-laws are from New Hampshire and didn't know anything about Baltimore, right? That they hadn't heard in the news until they started visiting us here. And now they're like, all they do is say, oh yeah, Baltimore's so great. We love it. You know, and all their friends are always hearing about how great Baltimore is when they come to visit us. So Baltimore has its challenges, but it's, you know, but we can work together to solve them. And that's going to take investment and time and dedication from both the people who live here and the people who live around the state. And I want it to be a place that everybody's excited to visit. You know, they're excited to bring their kids. They're excited to come here to jump in the harbor like I did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
Someday.
I tried.
Someday.
I didn't want to ask you how you were doing, whether you.
People kept asking me, what did it feel like?
People said you
felt like
swam with the
jumping into the
dolphins at the
bay.
aquarium. That's what the word on the street was. Somebody said you were at the aquarium side.
That's funny. It was no, it was great. And I do, you know, it was fun. I was there that day, and then on the 4th of July, I was over in Cherry Hill for their amazing waterfront festival, and I was looking at this
At
big,
the boathouse.
yeah, and this big beautiful field, and I was like, this is where we need a beach. You know, I mean, it's just exciting to think about what could be possible, and cleaning a harbor enough to make it swimmable is a pretty phenomenal thing. You know, in Paris they're talking about it. In London, I was in London not too long ago with my family. They have public swimming docks in some of the areas along the Thames, so it's pretty cool. It's possible.
It's also, once again, wonderful to talk about the harbor. You know, my wife used to work at DPW, and we have the little machine that goes in and picks up the little garbage.
The trash wheel.
Yes, I
Mr.
love the trash wheel.
Also an amazing Baltimore export.
Yeah.
You know.
It's actually Senor Trash Wheel. Dr. Trash Wheel. You
There's
got a
also
PhD
Professor
recently.
Trash Wheel. There's like 4 of them.
Yeah.
They all have slightly different names.
So when you were in
The
London,
Transformers.
Yeah.
I have to ask, when you were in London, did you ask them why they didn't pronounce it Thames?
I know. It
You're
is-
like,
She
you guys
lived a
know,
block
you
away.
know you're not pronouncing it correctly, right?
Well, it is funny because when I first moved to Baltimore and I said Thames Street, you know, and then I realized, oh, it's Thames Street. This is awesome, right? And so now when you see people who are not from Baltimore and they're saying Thames Street, you're like, no, it's Thames here, actually.
Brooke, let me tell you, as baby prosecutors,
Yeah.
Kurt's from Pittsburgh, I'm from PG County, which we can say on the show, and Adam's from Durham.
Prince
but
George's, yeah.
I've refused to do it. I'll tell you, unless Jack Johnson showed up here and said, called it gorgeous Prince George's, I just can't do it. I'm the biggest Angela Alsabrook supporter around. But we're in court, and they used to have to tell us how to pronounce some of the street names, because the street name, for instance, Catherine, right? It's Catherine, okay? Didn't know how to say McMecken.
Oh.
No, it was calling it McMeechin for a while.
McMeechin.
McMeechin,
Yep.
been on
McMeechin,
McMeechin
that's
Street.
rough.
And so that you would get these whispers from your community liaisons or from judges that have been around longer, and you never forgot it. You never messed that up the second time.
I'm
But then
sure.
when you leave, like if I used to say Patapsco, and it's Patapsco.
Yeah.
But that's not, it's like Brett Favre. Right? The spelling isn't right, but you
Yeah.
know it's not right, but then you're
Yeah.
forced to say it wrong.
Yep.
There was a lot of that as being young prosecutors in the city.
That's funny.
That's got to be fun for you to go out to Western Maryland. That had to be very different campaigning
Love
from
it. Yeah. I mean, we
Baltimore
have an
City.
awesome state. Maryland is great. And there's just, you know, there's so much opportunity and so many good things happening around the state, and really interesting projects. And, you know, a lot of which we actually talked about in this big report we did in January. So, you know, our, my initiatives in the Office of the Comptroller, we sort of have 3 priorities. One is to make government work better. So focused on, you know, making the agency work better, but also modernizing the agency. So all of our IT is from when I was in high school, like in the 90s, COBOL, DOS, you know, mainframes. Yes. So we are very focused.
It's an Atari joystick.
Yeah. So we're very focused on bringing things into the 21st century.
Listen, everything you've submitted with your tax returns is perfectly safe, Gideon. Don't worry.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the point where we asked Brooke about our tax returns.
I'm sure it's all very secure.
Yes. And then it is. And then we have a great anti-fraud program. Our second priority is really sharing the resources of the agency with the people of Maryland, making sure that we're getting out in the communities more so that people know, hey, you can get your unclaimed property here, or this is how you can pay your taxes, or we can help you set up a payment plan, or do you know how to set up a small business? And then third is really focusing on the future, like long-term economic growth and through procurement, pensions. But one of our biggest initiatives was this State of the Economy report, which I talked with Dr. K about, that we released in January. So, I'm like the elected CFO of the state of Maryland. And so we oversee the Bureau of Revenue Estimates, which is, we estimate how much money the state is going to bring in every year, and that allows us to set a budget. But when I entered office, we saw that our revenues really weren't coming in as quickly and as high a rate as we thought they should be. Like we're just not seeing the growth that we expected, and frankly, that all of our neighboring states were seeing. And so instead of just twiddling our thumbs, we got to work and we talked to our partners at the Fed and others, and we set up a series of roundtables with business leaders all over the state. Frostburg State and Salisbury and Southern Maryland and the Baltimore region. Talk to businesses. What are you seeing? How's it going in your industry? Like, how's growth? How can you hire? And then we crunched all the numbers we got in and put it all in one big report. First ever State of the Economy report that the state has ever done and that my agency has ever done, and release that in January right before session so that our General Assembly and our governor would have this data, right? I mean, you do that. We want to be able to be there to make sure county execs and General Assembly leaders and the governor's team have this data so that when they are formulating policy, they're doing it based on real things, right? Not on conjecture.
Making decisions based on
evidence.
On facts.
Yes,
exactly.
on facts. So we are accumulating the evidence to make the case, right? And so that is.
What did you learn from traveling around? I mean, if you can share a couple of those talking points of maybe things that stuck out to you from Marylanders.
Well, I will say it was really interesting. The number one thing that employers brought up to us as their challenge and their employees' challenge was the cost of housing. And that was not what we expected to hear from employers, but they were so focused on the fact that they couldn't recruit people because those new recruits couldn't find a house that they, within an hour of where the job was, or, just the cost of housing, which is the biggest part of the cost of living anywhere. And so that was really interesting because those anecdotes then jibed perfectly with the data that we collected, which showed that the cost of living in Maryland is higher than some of our neighboring states. So during the pandemic, we were getting people from higher cost of living states like New Jersey, New York, DC.
And losing people.
To
Delaware.
To Delaware, to Pennsylvania, the Carolinas.
Retirees.
Yeah. Or people who couldn't afford a house here. And they were like, you know what? I really want a house with a yard. I really don't want to drive 2 hours to work every day. I'm going to move someplace where I can make that happen. And I can find a job there because the job market's, people are in demand, right? Skilled workers are in demand. And we have a labor force participation rate problem too. So we have lost, when we did the report, we estimated we lost about 180,000 Marylanders from the workforce since before COVID.
Now, look, that's not new to Baltimore City, right? We've had population loss over the last decade that's almost unimaginable.
Yeah.
Tom Cole, a mutual friend of ours, I'm going to mention everyone I'm hanging out with tonight, who's another housing advocate.
Yep.
What do you think your office can do, whether it's directly related to the housing initiatives or from what you learned to help ameliorate that issue?
Yeah. So, our goal was really to get the data out there so that when the governor and the General Assembly or the Secretary of Department of Housing and Community Development, they had this and could make their case for the investments we needed to do so we could grow the economy, right? And create a state where people could afford to live more easily. And so I think our job is really to be that, not just a data keeper, but a data publisher, to share data in a way that's useful.
To make it accessible.
And I'm a huge proponent of government transparency. And so this just goes right along with that, making sure that we're reporting on things. And
you were probably such a good lawyer. I hate you
I enjoyed
so much
being
right
a lawyer.
now. She's
it was
like,
fun.
Her answers are so good.
I enjoyed being a litigator.
So we have a couple other tough questions for
Okay.
you. One of them I already asked, which was just when I call and ask for Brooke Lierman, why won't they put me through to you? Like I press 9 a lot,
and they just say no, sorry.
They don't, and then they said "se habla español," and it was just very difficult. You don't have to answer that. I wanted to ask you what was going on with my state tax return, but I've already written your father, because I know he writes one of the letters. I guess the last thing I just have to ask you is, you have taken Well, let me skip this. You can't escape the show without answering the normal lawyer questions, which is
Okay.
we have a
Yes.
triumvirate of questions.
Okay.
Normally we say your funniest story, your worst story, the story that sticks with you. So, given the fact that you did civil rights stuff, which can be really emotional. It's like everything that's horrible about what I do as a criminal defense attorney or did as a prosecutor combined with civil, right? Because you don't do a lot of that without something bad happening to somebody. Do me a favor and tell us about a story that stuck with you over the years.
Sure. And I will tell you before I do that I did one criminal defense case through the CJA process.
Yes. Do you want to be of counsel here?
No.
Yeah,
and
but
I was like, I
you
can
didn't
never
have to
do
say
this again.
But you didn't have to say no so quick. Like that, just so you know, the doors, la puerta está abierta. Like you can come
I was
back.
like, I can't learn a whole new set of procedure. This is too much.
Wait till you get to the billing for CJA.
Although I will say the overturning of Chevron really broke my heart, and I cried
No,
a little bit.
No.
Because admin law was my favorite, and I sort of might write my admin law professor to just be like, Professor Blaze,
Why did you bring that up? We spent the entire last
we had a whole
podcast with
session
Adam.
Did you all about
APA.
Chevron?
Yeah, well, immigration.
Yeah,
Where I-
immigration, it's huge.
I just
mean, it
played
touches
for
everything,
Adam the
disability
Lauren
rights, everything.
Bobert. I just played Lauren Bobert's questions from the other day where she didn't even read Chevron. Adam, yes, Adam does, because Adam taught me. But it was horrible to watch congressional proceedings where another Republican was so offended by Lauren Boebert that he had to educate Lauren Boebert and say, just stop. Like, that's what it says. Now let the agency head keep going.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
But it's like bringing up old girlfriends.
I know,
that was
sorry.
not.
I know,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
You were A
I
plus
just want you to
material.
know that I'm
one of the
mourning
best
with you
guests.
as well, okay?
Oh, she's sitting Shiva over Chevron.
Yeah.
That's fine. There we go, Brooke.
So anyway, yeah, I will say, the best part of my job now is working with people, like working with constituents and Marylanders and actually helping them solve problems. The best part of my job as a lawyer was the work that I got to do with my clients. And I had a number of really amazing clients. One, James Owens was wrongfully imprisoned for over 25 years for a really brutal murder and rape that he did not commit. And we sued Baltimore City Police over withholding evidence. And it was the biggest settlement in Baltimore City history when we won.
Probably before it was cool.
Yeah.
Before it was fashionable.
It was. And he was just this amazingly resilient man. I mean, I can't imagine going through what he did. And I've had the honor to meet now a number of gentlemen who were wrongfully convicted and then found innocent, and the state gives them money. Now there's a statute to help make them whole, so they don't have to sue.
Which is a newer statute.
Which is a newer statute. So they come to the Board of Public Works, which I sit on because we approve the amounts. And it is so incredible to meet these people because they have been through something that I cannot even imagine, and they are kind and grateful and really focused on the future and on living their best lives. So that really resonates with me. I had some amazing I represented the workers at the ESPN zone. Do any of you remember the ESPN zone in the Inner Harbor?
It's still there.
Yeah. So
it's Phillips now.
Now it's Phillips.
Oh, it's Phillips?
Yeah, now it's
Yeah, it's
Phillips.
been
Yeah. So I represented the workers there.
Phillips for like 15
Like
years.
Do you know the only part of Baltimore City I don't go to is the harbor?
Yeah.
Krabby Dicks.
So it's yes. So when it closed, I think it was 2009. It was one of my first cases, and I represented the workers there because they were not given notice by Disney, which owns the ESPN zone, in violation of the WARN Act. And so we won summary judgment, and I think it was
fought Disney and
we
won.
fought Disney, and I think
Damn, Brooke.
don't quote me. I know I'm like being
Oh, we're
quoted right
quoting
now,
you right
but I
now.
think it might have been one of the first summary judgment decisions against the Walt Disney Company, like nationally, because they always settled beforehand.
Let me calm you down here. Our show is like an unreported opinion. Okay, it can't be quoted. All right, that's the best thing about us. In fact, that was the backup name to Lawyers on the Rocks. Like, if the show ever has to go sober, we're going to unreported opinion.
opinion.
Yeah.
So
we're
not-
merely
yeah,
persuasive.
merely persuasive.
exactly.
But I loved
Ooh, I like
representing the workers at the ESPN zone, and just ran into one of them the other day, actually, who was our named plaintiff, and he was phenomenal, and he looked great, and he's doing wonderful, and it was really wonderful. I felt so honored to represent the people that I worked with, and to be able to. I always thought of my job not as to be their voice, but to help make sure that their voices were heard. And so
you miss it.
It was great.
Kurt,
I
do you
do.
smell
I
that?
loved
You
it.
smell what's cooking. She's missing it. I'm thinking, just put it on the website now. We're not going to get grieved. Like, we won't
could
get
never go
grieved
to
unless
any
we
law
get
firm
grieved.
except BGL, which is just down the street. So actually right next to our new building. So I'm really proud. We were the first agency to move out of State Center, and now I have 300 employees at 7 St. Paul Street, really trying to, help with get the revitalization of downtown Baltimore going. So
It is pretty wonderful, as we're looking at office space too. It is really wonderful to see a lot. When Kurt and I were prosecutors and Adam's office was in Mount Vernon, a lot of these restaurants were open. There was always 15 places to eat, and it has been very disheartening over the last decade that we've been downtown in the Central Business District to watch even the Subways close, the
That's what
Dunkin'
I rode
Donuts
the
close.
client I was on the elevator with a client. And he goes, "Where do you eat lunch now?"
yeah.
And his ex had worked in this area, and she goes, "There used to be 20 places. I would meet my ex for lunch all the time."
I think our hope with, frankly,
state offices
coming
there'll
downtown
be
is
more
that
people.
we'll be able to have more coffee shops and more places to socialize, because we don't always want to be in your office.
I know, and it's hard. It's like chicken and egg, right? So, but no, I hope so too. I mean,
There's nowhere to get boba.
I spent
okay, let's
so
be
much
real
time
clear.
at Java Joe's. I miss Java
Okay,
Joe's.
we did a lot of Java Joe's, but I just want a boba place.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the middle of the day you want a boba.
Yeah, I'm a big.
Am I the only one that
I
likes
go to
boba?
You're
Petermore a
alone.
lot. Do you guys go to Petermore?
Yes.
Petermore's good.
Solid falafel.
Yeah.
Do you know what gets done after Petermore? Pita less. Not a lot of work gets done. There are a couple restaurants where we have to have discussions of how productive does the rest of the day become?
Because it's so much.
You know what? I'll give you an example, because I know you're in Baltimore now, but when you were in Annapolis, because Elena adores Potato
we're still in
Valley.
Annapolis. Oh, I
well,
love
you
Potato
are, but
Valley.
you have an office here.
Yeah.
But if you go to Potato Valley,
Valley
nothing's
is
getting
so
done the
good.
rest of the day.
My only way to get Teddy, my son, to come with me to work in Annapolis is if I promise him we'll go to Potato Valley for lunch.
I almost want to meet you there. Can we organize a
Yes.
chance encounter and just see Elena and him
Teddy
just see
back
each
together
other? Be like-
again. It's
and
been like
looking
since
at each
they
other
were
like,
3.
I know you.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
4.
I want to share that Brooke's son and my daughter were in a class, and thank God your son was not involved in this, but the probably the funniest moment of my life at that school was when I came to pick up my daughter, and there were 3 little girls standing together, and they all got haircuts at school because they hid in an L-shaped room, not unlike my office,
hilarious.
and they had a substitute come in for a second, and they grabbed scissors,
And started
and they
cutting
all cut each other's hair.
That's amazing.
And my daughter, because she has, that sort of thick curly hair,
Yeah.
it was less noticeable. It was just like a chunk missing. But there was a young lady with blonde hair like yours,
like
long
me.
blonde hair,
It's pretty hard to hide.
and she got bangs.
Oh.
And
It
I just sat
happens in
there,
every girl's life.
and they
It's, in
showed
every
me a
blonde's
plastic
life at
bag
some
of
point.
hair, and they just said, "Do you want it?" I'm like, I don't know even what to, I'm not going to make a weave out. I don't know
Right.
what I'm going to do with
Oh,
this.
that's funny.
But I sat and I just laughed the whole way home, because I was like, I
Yeah.
can't wait for you to tell your
Those
mom
mothers.
that you
Yeah.
played hair cuttery.
It's true. That's so
The
funny.
good old days. Well, look, we appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
We are so excited for you to be our first female governor.
Female comptroller. I'm the first female comptroller.
No,
No.
I thought we
am-
were talking about next jobs.
We're talking about comptroller.
No, the next. Adam, you're the one that made me put that in. You said, "Are you excited to be the first?" They must put them autocorrect. Is that autocorrect?
Yeah, I think maybe you didn't type it.
No,
right.
I'm pretty sure it was predictive text.
Oh, was that?
AI.
Was it AI or was it like Word Perfect
No, no,
DOS
no.
that did
No,
auto?
no.
Comptroller and governor rhyme.
No, I will say I love being comptroller, and I'm really focused on making sure that we do
Really
what we need to
focused
do.
on spreadsheets and balance sheets and
Doing the best job we
ones
could
and
for
zeros.
Marylanders. Yes, we're rebuilding the agency in a way that makes government work better each and every day.
I hate how good you are, but I love how good you are.
We appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
I
you for
appreciate
coming
you
on.
guys. Yeah, thanks for having me on, and Appreciate all you do for your clients and here in Baltimore City.
How's
Thank
the
you.
mineral? Come on, give us the mineral water review. Could
The
you
mineral
taste
water-
the Gerolsteiner?
You know, it's lovely. I am good with my LaCroix and Spindrift. I don't know if it's worth the upcharge, but it's very good.
Did you like the glass? There was a noticeable etching on the glass. I think
Darth Vader.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, we try to give the guests,
I
you know,
am
because
your
you're the
father.
tax woman.
Yes, I am the tax woman. There you go.
And we just wanted you to be comfortable.
It's lovely. Thank you. My kids would like it too. Lots of Star Wars watching in my house with an 11-year-old boy. So.
I mean, you just made that sound like a bad thing.
No.
Once again, A plus and then just drops down a little bit. It's like when you go to the wine store and it's like 92 points.
No. I appreciate a good. I like Star Wars. It's all
She's
good.
getting
Although I will
defensive. You hear the
say,
voice.
I prefer the originals. I got to be honest.
Of course you do.
So
You should.
once Han Solo died, I was less interested.
Like
Spoiler alert.
Han Solo died?
Adam doesn't even know the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars. You just hit on every major argument that like our lunch hours
Is
here
that Spock's son?
are mostly spent arguing over Seltzer and Star Trek versus Star Wars.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, Adam does two things. He does that to spite us, and he grows a mustache to spite us. And you're seeing both of them in action as we speak. But,
Excellent.
But
I
thank
feel
you
so
for coming
fortunate.
on.
Thank
I
you.
think we're kind of on your way home if you were playing Oregon Trail.
Yeah, no, this is great. I
which you could
appreciate
play
it.
on the comptroller's old computers.
You could. I consider myself Generation Oregon Trail. Like that is I'm not Gen X. I'm not millennial. I'm right in between Oregon Trail generation.
Just shooting the buffalo and keeping Marylanders safe.
Yep, exactly.
That's what I love.
Just don't
So-
get dysentery.
And rooting for the Orioles. Yes. There you go.
Yeah, we can't end with dysentery. So thank
Let's
you
go
for
O's.
coming. Let's go
Let's go O's.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Oh, you want me to do it? Okay.
Do you want me to do it? Everyone's pointing at you. It's obvious it's your turn.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Lawyers on the Rocks. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed making this episode. Until the next time, sit back, relax, pour yourself a drink. Till the next episode of